Deep Impact was #1 at the US box office for 2 weeks from May 10th to May 23rd, 1998, and was coincidentally released the same year as Armageddon, a movie which is very, very similar in terms of plot. That was also #1 in 98, and we'll be looking at that in July. I think it's July. We'll get to that one. But now, let's look at a movie that proves that even when he's announcing that the world is about to end, Morgan Freeman still has one of the most soothing voices known to mankind.
I want you to take the baby. I'm not taking the baby. Daddy.
Starring, amongst others, Tia Leone, Elijah Wood, Robert Duvall and Morgan Freeman. Directed by Mimi Leder off of a script by Bruce Joel Robin and Michael Tolkien. This bit Lord of the Rings. This is my Movies at 20 review for Deep Impact. And as with every Movies at 20 review, spoilers abound. Deep Impact is about an asteroid that is an ELE, also known as an extinction level event, which is heading straight for Earth and looks set to wipe out all life on the planet. The only hope for humanity is a group of astronauts who are sent to the asteroid in order to drop a nuke inside and blow it up. Sound familiar? It should. I could use almost exactly the same synopsis to describe Armageddon, which I'm guessing is a film that more people will be familiar with. But this film came first, and it's largely very different when it comes to the tone. For example, much more time is spent dealing with the people on the ground who are waiting for this killer asteroid to arrive than is spent in space with the people trying to stop it. And those would-be heroes? Well, they're actual astronauts, which is helpful as opposed to oil drillers. This one takes itself much more seriously and tries to explore how people would react if this were actually to happen. It's less concerned with spectacle and largely tries to stay away from the ridiculous. And while I personally prefer Armageddon, just purely based on an enjoyment level, it's one of my most rewatched films, Armageddon. I may do a list of the films I watched the most at some point. Armageddon will certainly be on there. Deep Impact is arguably the better film. For starters, this one treats the end of the world appropriately. There isn't much humour here, and when there is, it largely feels out of place. I mean, take this woman, for example, who just screams out this question after the ELE announcement.
Rome, St. Paulo, Cairo, Berlin. Does anyone know how big the one was that killed all the dinosaurs?
It's a question asked purely to give the audience a laugh, but it doesn't feel like it belongs. There's so much dramatic weight and concern over the world ending that moments of comedy just aren't needed. They feel a bit forced. Deep Impact is so much better when it lets people act the way they should act in a real-life situation. Although, and I'm not sure if this was an intentional sight gag or not, but just a road sign only displaying the word balls while all these people are queued up trying to escape certain death, that amused me. What makes this movie is character moments, particularly towards the end. The lead here is Tia Leone's Jenny Lerner, who's the reporter who first gets wind that something's going on. She doesn't understand what it is, she doesn't know that it's something quite this big, but she knows she's onto something, and she pursues it until she eventually finds out the truth. Now, Leone isn't great here. She doesn't, at least to me, she doesn't convince when it comes to being this go-getting reporter who's out to get the story of a lifetime. She just doesn't seem able to convey what needs to be conveyed about what kind of situation that she's in. So I do wish that somebody a little bit more capable would have been cast in this role. But there are moments that she shines, and none more so than her final scene. It was a brave move, and I've said spoilers, but it's a brave move to have the lead killed off, and it makes the film much more memorable than it otherwise would have been. Watching her and her father embrace as a giant giant doesn't even do justice, huge tidal waves comes crashing down on top of them. It's just a wonderfully haunting moment that just shows that this is a movie that is definitely more interested in character than it is special effects. I mean, don't get me wrong, when the mini-asteroid does hit, when it does come down to the ground, there is some great spectacle to be had there. Some of the shots of the devastation still hold up as visually impressive, but this isn't what the film seems to be interested in, and moments like this only occur in the final half hour or so. And I don't say that as a negative. I'm all for movies that are spectacle. You may see I wear a Geostorm t-shirt sometimes when I'm doing reviews. I love dumb action movies, but this one plays it a little bit differently, and I respect it for that. Perhaps my favourite scene, though, involves Elijah Wood and Lily Sobieski. I forget how to say her name. But they play two high school students who are in love, and when the lottery results are revealed to see who gets to take shelter in a bunker and who gets this chance at survival, they find themselves at opposite end of the results. Elijah Wood's character, Leo, he does get a place because he discovered the asteroid, so he and his family are pre-selected. But Sarah and her family aren't. This, for me, was the most effective, or one of the most effective aspects of the story, is this love story between the two of them as they get married, so he can take her with him and take her family with them. But it turns out that only Sarah is allowed to join them. She opts to stay with her family, and he flees the bus to go and save her. And the scene where her parents just give her the infant child, her little brother, and just say, take him away, and they say goodbye to them, that's, for me, it's one of the most heartfelt moments in this movie, and it's perfectly played out by everybody involved.
You don't have any time.
Come on.
You have to go now.
No. Put this on. Daddy! Daddy, what are you doing? I want you to take the baby. What? No.
Yes, no arguments.
No. I don't want to go.
Yes.
Elsewhere in the cast is the ever-dependable Morgan Freeman. I don't think there's a Morgan Freeman performance that I don't like. This is certainly a good one. It's not one of his best, but then it's not really his fault because it's not an overly demanding role for Morgan Freeman, I don't think. He's in presidential mode a lot of the time, which means we only get to see him as a president. There isn't a great deal of time to see who he really is. There is one scene in particular that does this, though, and I think it does it really well. It's just him alone in the Oval Office, just contemplating the enormity of what's happening. Like, the world could end, and he's the person in charge of it while it's happening. It's a brief scene. It doesn't last very long, but it's one that I think's desperately needed in this. It gives him a little bit more depth, and any material that Morgan Freeman gets, he's going to try and run with. As for the mission to stop the asteroid itself, this is where the key difference between Deep Impact and Armageddon comes into play. There's no oil drillers. There's no, we will make 800 feet. There's none of that. Instead, we have a skilled group of astronauts whose mission to save the world is treated with the sort of gravitas that it needs to have. As for the mission to stop the asteroid, well, this is where the key difference between Deep Impact and Armageddon comes into play. There's no oil drillers, and there's no, we will make 800 feet. There's none of that. Instead, we have a skilled group of astronauts whose mission to save the world is treated with the sort of gravitas it needs to have. I found myself rooting for all these people to not only save the day, but to return home safely, and I think that's largely down to the performance that Robert Duvall gives. He plays Captain Tanner with such warmth and integrity that I found myself invested in all the characters around him, purely because he was invested in them. When a young Jon Favreau was killed off, it hurt, despite the fact there wasn't really any time to get to know this guy. And to add to the comparisons to Armageddon as well, when the sacrifice is made at the end, it's not just one lone man staying behind to save the world. It's everyone on this ship killing themselves, and there's still time for a video message home for them to say goodbye. Armageddon, I think, did it slightly better with this because it spent more time with these people, but it's almost as effective here. I do sort of wish there could have been 2 Deep Impacts. There could have been one with the people on the ground and one with these guys up in space. And really, that point is perhaps why Deep Impact doesn't quite resonate with me as much as it could. It is nice that we're getting time to see these people on the ground, to experience what it's like to be on Earth when you've just found out that the Earth's about to be destroyed. But there's at times too much going on, too many people to follow, that it's hard to truly latch on to any of them. It's occasionally messy as a result of trying to juggle so much, and it does affect my overall enjoyment of it. That being said though, this is definitely a film I would advise checking out if you haven't seen it. It holds up well for the most part 20 years on, and it has some great performances along with a script that for the most part gets the important emotional moments right. I'm going to give Deep Impact an 8 out of 10. Have you seen Deep Impact? If so, let me know what you thought of it and where it stands for you in the Deep Impact versus Armageddon debate. While you're at it, let me know what you choose out of Dante's Peak versus Volcano as well, just because I'm curious. I'll always go with Dante's Peak, just for Pierce Brosnan singing Row Your Boat. Great moment in cinema. Movies at 20 will be back in 2 weeks' time, I believe, with Godzilla, but look out for more videos between then and now, including my review for Deadpool 2, which will be live next week. You can follow me on Twitter at JoePJulians, on Stardust at JoeJulians, and I will see you on the next video. Thank you very much for watching.